All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Sean Callan. Julie Chetney.
Here.
Tom Chiappa. Here. David Christofoli is absent. Jim McKenzie's here. Kristen Norfleet.
Here.
And Sean Unmock. Here. And Michael Pastella is absent. All right, stand for the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so nobody has signed up for the floor to the public, so we're on to acknowledgements with Tom Chiappa.
I got nothing. Is it working? You hear me?
There
You can hear me there? Okay. I'm right here. Okay. Well then, let's start at Frederick Layton School. Girls on the Run is an after-school program. This is Layton's second year in the program. It promotes the health and well-being of students and to empower and inspire young girls to recognize their strengths and make positive and meaningful connections with others. Fourth graders also toured the Erie Canal Museum as an extension of their classroom learning and New York State standards. Fifth graders went to the Syracuse Mets game to celebrate Education Day at the stadium. Frederick Layton School also recently held their 36th annual triathlon. 36th annual triathlon, wow. It was a very busy month. Next, we're over to Minetto, and on June 12th, our students celebrated our fourth quarter Minetto Way Assembly. The students thought about all they have learned this year, sang our Minetto Way song, and listened to our special guest, Mr. Greg Callan. Mr. Callan shared a message of how being a problem solver helped him become an athlete who loves golf. He also shared ways that he inspires and supports our Oswego community. The students enjoyed his message, and he promised to visit again in the fall to share more about the game of golf. Now to the middle school. The Oswego 8th grade students, along with students from other Oswego County schools, took part in the Oswego County Youth Career Summit at the Oswego County Fairgrounds in Sandy Creek, New York, on Wednesday, June 5th. They watched live presentations to learn about careers in the medical field, law enforcement, agriculture, and opportunities at Cayuga Community College. They got to participate in drone soccer. They also got to participate in a trade show to learn about the many career opportunities that await them in the future, including local youth programs, Novellis, Pathfinder Bank, and apprenticeship programs, including sheet metal workers, iron workers, and Central New York Electrical Training Alliance, and several more. They interacted with local professionals about the requirements to enter the fields, along with salary and benefits for those careers. The event was coordinated by Brian Chetney of the Oswego County Youth Bureau. I'm seeing a pattern. Okay, and now over to the high school. The month of June has been very busy at OHS. The band and orchestra had their final concerts of the year highlighting seniors. The class of 2024 held their senior ball at the Lake Ontario Event Center on June 15th. On June 3rd, the Oswego Rotary sponsored the annual OHS Top 100 Night, honoring the top 25 from each grade level. Staying at the high school, recently students from the CARE program held their graduation ceremony. Congratulations to McKenna Grant, Mariah Gillette, Nate Cornelius, Ali Casimiro, Shania Haskins, Dominic Olivadato, Jada Graves, Adriana Barr, Cadence Lofstrom. Now, over to Riley School. It's been an amazing last few weeks at Riley Elementary. Our fifth graders went to Dare Day at the college. It was an enormous amount of work and fun to put on by our Dare officers. Stacy Clark's music classes enjoyed a culminating campfire song, complete with an authentic camping experience with a campfire, a starry sky, mood music, and a tent. Tom Verano graced us with a school-wide performance of his painting expertise, coupled with character messages to stand up for what's right in this world. Staying at Charles Riley, this month's community gathering assembly, put on by the second graders, encapsulated the essence of our Riley family, complete with a first ever school-wide picture taken with a drone and our very own Buccaneer. Second graders also enjoyed a day of bowling as an end of year celebration. Springfest, an annual event that is the brainchild of our very own Kate McCroby, was a smashing hit this year. With the perfect weather, students enjoyed various activities such as Pass the Chicken, parachute fun, relay races with sponges and water, Minute to Win It games, and the favorite Water Cup Passing Challenge. Now over to Fitzhugh Park. FPS was lucky to have hosted Tom Verano last week. Tom brought his emotion into art presentation and wowed our students and staff with not only his talent, but his powerful message of overcoming adversity, being kind, and setting goals for their future. And district-wide, we have a video. So what you just saw and heard there were students from Kingsford Park School, Frederick Layton School, Fitzhugh Park School, and Charles E. Riley. They combined together to rehearse the Star Spangled Banner last week. Unfortunately, because of the heat we're experiencing, these 92 fabulous kids were supposed to perform at the Syracuse Mets game tonight, but they still have done a great job, a spectacular job, and would have made Oswego proud. So keeping along the, oh, and they'll do it, there you go. And sticking district-wide, the class of 2024 had the opportunity to go back to their elementary schools and Oswego Middle School to walk through one last time. The younger students were so excited to see our graduates in their caps and gowns and to cheer them on. And that's all the good stuff we have that happened around the district.
Great, thank you, Tom. Next on the agenda is the Board of Education and a discussion of our 2024-2025 meeting schedule. So Dr. Kilmer and his administration is drawn up some suggestions, which was shared to the board. And the point of this is to have a general discussion, and then this will come up for a vote at our reorganizational meeting. So Dr. Kilmer, do you have any?
No, just it's presented. If there's any questions or concerns, we should talk about it now, but we just need to get that approved so we have the official for the 24-25 calendar. And just note, the July 2nd meeting, which was previously approved, again, July 2nd, it is a 9 a.m. meeting.
Right. And so that has already been approved by this board. So what we're talking about really is the remainder of the calendar. And so actually, this is just up for discussion so that we can have an open discussion amongst the board members. If there is nothing, then Dr. Kilmer can go ahead and we'll vote on this at the reorganizational meeting on July 2nd. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so sounds like everybody's good with it. If anything happens to come up between now and July 2nd, if you could just let Dr. Kilmer and myself know, and we'll look to work through that. Okay, thank you. Next up is our superintendent's report. Dr. Kilmer.
We're actually going to start off with Mr. Bick from Fiscal Advisors. He's going to do a presentation on our long-range capital planning. Since I arrived, I've talked a lot about developing long-range plans so that everything that we do in any given year builds on future years. And so as we've been having a number of facilities meetings, I've had a number of conversations with John and asked him to help me, picture what our facility or capital projects might look like over the next
10 to 15 years so that we can truly see what that might look like, how we might approach financing that, because there is a great deal of facility work that needs to occur within the district. But more importantly, it's really important that we are designing capital projects that build upon each other. They are not isolated projects. They are projects within a larger plan over an extended period of time. And so John's just going to talk briefly about what the numbers look like for you all, and then you can ask any questions from there. So, John, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Dr. Kilmer. Thanks, Pete, for having me put this together and present to you tonight. So when Dr. Kilmer first asked me to kind of put together this potential long-range plan as to what future projects might look like, we set a few parameters, the idea being that projects are voted on a more regular basis every 2 to 3 years, and preferably all these projects would be a no tax impact or no tax increase project. So anytime we want to plan forward and look to see what potential projects would look like, we have to look to see what the district's current situation is with the debt service and aid related to prior projects and ongoing projects and where that is. So that's what this first page is. The first column is the district's total debt service less the building aid for all of your prior projects. The next column is the 2018 project, which is currently underway. We have part of that permanently financed, and we know we have a good idea of what phase 4 will look like. So we are confident that this is a fairly good representation of where that project will end up when it's done. That being said, we do have a lot of flexibility built into this schedule, so if anything changes, we have the ability to adapt to that moving forward. So the last column is a result of the sum of those columns, and the idea being that the total debt service less your building aid, which is part of your capital exclusion every year, we want to keep that relatively stable. You will see in 23-24 to 24-25, there is an increase from 1.3 million up to 1.9. And that's kind of a result of kind of the perfect storm of your pilot negotiations starting and desire to increase your tax levy to maximize your aid when the pilot negotiations start. So that's why I just wanted to point out that's the reason for that jump there. But the idea being that we want to keep that column relatively stable year to year to limit any potential tax impact. So what we do is we look at that column and then we look to see where any drops occur. So in 27-28, you'll see that 1.9 drops to the 1.6. So working backwards from that, we want to vote roughly 2 years before that. So a 24-25 vote would result in debt and aid starting in that fiscal year. So what does that project look like? If we go to the next page, in this scenario, we have a $45 million project utilizing $8.5 million of capital reserve. If that capital reserve number changes up or down, rough numbers, by $1 million, the project size will increase or decrease by about $5.1 million. And in all of these scenarios, we assumed 5% of the total project is ineligible for building aid, either work done over the district's maximum cost allowances or done on work that is not eligible for building aid, such as concession stands or storage buildings, things like that. And then we wanted to look to see, okay, so assuming that this is the project we want to undertake, where can we do this work? So we looked at the maximum cost allowances for all of the district's buildings, maximum cost allowances being the maximum amount of work that SED is willing to aid at any particular building within a 5-year period. So they will calculate the maximum cost allowances and look to see any projects that you have done within the last 5 years and deduct those from your available maximum cost allowances for future projects. So in this scenario, you see the construction and incidental cost allowances for each building. Construction cost allowances being work that can be done with inside the footprint of the school building. So any classroom renovations, gym renovations, things like that, any building systems, boilers, roofs. And then your incidental cost allowances are any any professional fees or site work that you plan to do at that building. So if there's a project with a lot of parking or a lot of sidewalk work, we would want to keep an eye on the incidental cost allowances. And you'll notice that the incidental cost allowances for Layton and the high school are highlighted in red. And that is because we know that phase 4 of the 2018 project will utilize those available maximum cost allowances. So I wanted to point out that those aren't necessarily available for this $45 million project because they're already accounted for in the 2018 project. So the next page is just an expanded version of what the first page was. So column 5 is your total debt service, less column 6 is your total building, or your total aid, resulting in column 9, which is your estimated new taxes to be raised. So if we go to the next page, you can see how that layers into the prior version and maintains that $1.9 million debt service less the building aid, carrying forward through 2030 or 2029-30. So knowing that there's a drop in that fiscal year, we work backwards 2 years, and we would want to vote in the fall of 26. So in the 26-27 fiscal year. So knowing that there's that drop from 1.9 down to $1 million, what does that potential project look like? So if we go to the next page, it's the same scenario, a $40 million project utilizing $3.5 million of capital reserve. Same scenario holds true. If that capital reserve amount changes, the project amount changes. We're assuming that 5% of the project is ineligible for aid again. And the maximum cost allowances are showing what's available at each building, less the 2024 project, because that will be within the 5-year look-back period for SED to calculate the maximum cost allowances. And also phase 4 of the 2018 project will have occurred at that point, resulting in no cost allowances on the incidental side available for Layton and the high school. So the next page is just the same scenario, total debt service less the aid, showing how we structure the debt and creating this debt structure that keeps that $1.9 million of local share available or consistent through the 2031-32 year. So again, there's another drop. I apologize that this is kind of repetitive, but that's kind of the nature of the beast when you're looking at the same process over and over. So in this scenario, we have a $50 million project resulting in, or utilizing $5 million of capital reserve. Again, same thing, showing what is available for maximum cost allowances at each building. You'll notice that Layton and Ella at the high school now have some available incidental maximum cost allowances because there are projects that will have passed the 5-year look-back period at that point. So the next page is just the same thing again with the 28-29 project. So now we can see how that layers in with everything here. And again, carrying that $1.9 million forward through 2032-33. So in that scenario, we want to look at another project, and this would result in a $40 million project utilizing $4 million of capital reserve. And you'll notice that the maximum cost allowances for all of the buildings are to be determined at this point because by now, we don't know what would have been done in the prior project. So everything is kind of up in the air because we don't know what the district would have done at that point. So, moving forward, and if we go to the last page, we can see how all of this layers in together. Maintaining that $1.9 million local share through 25-36, or 2035-36. And in this scenario, it allows you to undertake $175 million of capital work, utilizing $21 million of capital reserve, of which you already have 10. So it was our attempt to create projects that would be voted on a more regular basis. The work would be done a little bit faster because they're a little bit smaller projects, and allows you to utilize your reserves in a way that lets you maximize the work that you can do and set you up for future projects where you wouldn't need as high of reserve amounts. Any questions?
So before the board goes to ask any questions, just a couple of things to think about. So why would I ask John to do this? One, we have a building condition survey, which we are required to do by New York State regularly. The one that was done, I think it was 18 months ago, shows $230 million of work that needs to be done within the district, okay? And that doesn't even address many of the instructional improvements that I and many of the administrators would like to see within the district over time. Two, we're currently still in a 2018 project. So phase 4 is all the way back to 2018 project. We want to do, and I asked John, and I've talked with our architects about this as well, I'm looking for a much more aggressive approach to trying to address facility needs. I don't want to get into a position where we are constantly trying to fix emergencies. I want us to try to be a little bit more proactive. Not only doing some infrastructure work, but also doing instructional needs work. And so a big part of all of that is then, so how do you pay for this? You've got this giant bill of work that needs to be done, and it's not as if you can go to the taxpayers over and over and over again. So how does a district approach this? Well, you do it by trying to maintain. In other words, how can we, based on what the community has already agreed to provide the district and to try to keep status quo, what do we need to do to try to aggressively get significant amounts of facility work done? And that's where you leverage doing as much aidable work as possible, focus very much on capital reserve, and trying to fund capital reserve. And then doing projects regularly so our community and students can see and feel the improvements year after year after year. And so that's really the basis behind our original conversations and why I asked John to come to us today to talk about this. But I mean, if you think about it, if we're able to execute as John has outlined for us, and there's lots of variables out there that could absolutely have an impact on this, but if we're able to execute as presented, we will have $175 million worth of work done in a decade. In 10 years. Done. That's extraordinary, right? Again, is this aggressive? Absolutely. Are there, again, lots of factors out there that could delay parts of this? Of course there are. But I do think it's at least important for us as a community and you as the board to talk about what should our approach be? How do we want to develop a fiscal plan to address facilities moving forward? And then we want to, whatever that decision is, communicate that very clearly to our community. So everyone understands what's the plan, not just for this project, but for all of the projects, because every project will lead into another. And that's a really important part of any long-range plan. So thank you, John.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Certainly appreciate John and Dr. Kilmer putting that in front of us. And I think it's important that this type of vision and this type of planning is important So I think having a plan allows us to explain it better and have more people invested in it and understanding it. I think that's key, that's a big key. So thanks, John, for guiding us through that and for putting this together, so it's important.
Any other board members?
I agree with what Sean was saying, and I have liked the philosophical and economic approach to this and taking the smaller bites in closer proximity to each other as opposed to the long range, because we saw exactly what happened with this 10-year plan, because there's no accounting for what can happen in the economics and what's going on in society. So I really do appreciate it, and I think it forces us also to look at that plan, both with the fiscal plan and our strategic plan, and make them align. So I appreciate it.
One other thing is that, doing our building survey, we certainly get a lot of feedback from our staff. And so what are we doing for our staff and our students that are in these facilities? And I think it shows them that that we're supporting their needs, the longer and the more detailed our plan is for their facilities and their teaching environment. I mean, that's also very helpful and supportive to our staff, which I think is important.
So I just have a quick question about about the numbers here. Did we come to these numbers based on what is allowable, based on aidability and number of years between touching a building, or were aspects of the BCS actually taken into account for each building, saying, okay, so we weren't looking at what's needed in the building, we were just looking at the dollars that we could actually spend on each building?
That's a great question. And I should have mentioned that the first 3 projects in this scenario incorporate all of your available maximum cost allowances for those buildings. So you are utilizing all of you're undertaking all of the work that you can do and receive aid on it in those first 3 projects.
Okay. And I forget the number now. Where are we being aidable right now to 80-something%?
85.3%.
85%? Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
I think this new approach is a lot better because I think we're delivering and people feel the benefit right away instead of we talk about how we're going to deliver these programs and a lot of the kids are going to be graduated before it's ever here. So I think that doing these smaller projects and doing them more frequently, it doesn't require you to have long-term memory to see that we're delivering. It's happening. It's constantly happening. We're constantly renovating. We're constantly improving, and people feel it instead of it being something that they come back after they graduate and they're alumni, and maybe it's done then.
And just to be clear, these are not small projects. A $30 to $50 million project is by no means small, but what it is they are, our hope is that we can design a project that can be completed, meaning from the moment you put the shovels in the ground to final costs is within 2 years, right? Because what you want is you want a project in which you can predict the best possible as to what we can get done. What doesn't work is if you go out with these $150 million whatever projects that are going to take 5, 6, 8, 10 years. You're placing escalation estimates in, and you have no idea what you're going to get. And there's nothing more frustrating about planning the next project when you're not even sure what you're going to get in the current project. And so our hope is that we can design projects that we can see completed in that 24-month window, which allows us to inform planning for the next. Because again, the moment you get one, when you vote on the 24 project, that's just the beginning. So that's just the beginning of design. There's a whole nother 8 months of much more intricate design before SED even gets it. And then you're not until the following year that you're actually shovels in the ground. Well, what's happening with facilities during that time? We're planning the next one. So there's constantly work where we're planning for what's next. And you can't plan for what's next if you're still not sure about what's going to happen currently. And so that helps, I think, a great deal in just moving this type of project forward. And just, again, I'm not sure that everyone understands, but maximum cost allowance, just as a phrase to describe what the state limits, and there's a calculation for every building in a district as to the maximum amount they will aid both for construction and incidentals. Okay, and those numbers reset every 5 years. So if we go to SED with a project and they approve it, the moment they approve, is it the approval or submission?
It's really the day that they decide to do the calculation. They'll look back 5 years from that date. But general rule of thumb is 5 years from the submission date. when
The
you submit
submittal.
it, just to be safe.
Right, so if we submit a project to the state on January 1, even though we're not gonna put shovels in the ground probably until the following either winter or likely the next spring, that clock has already begun. All right, and so 5 years from that date, it resets. So anything that we dedicated to that project then suddenly becomes the total amount in aidability again. And so that's the dance that's really important in working with John, and also our bond counsel as well, in making sure that we're capitalizing on that. We do not want to be, or we want to minimize the amount of work that we're doing that isn't within that aidability. There's always going to be some work that's not going to get aidable. But if we're doing our fiscal duty or meeting our fiscal duty to our taxpayers, we're ensuring that we're maximizing the amount of work that we can do that's fully aidable back to us.
Anything else from the board? Okay. All right, we're still on superintendent's report, part 2,
Part 2.
strategic planning.
Strategic plan, actually, I'm going to stand up for this. So I just wanted to talk briefly about the strategic planning process and where we are, and that I'm grateful to have in your hands a final draft of the updated strategic plan. As you know, we are from the get-go focused on continuous growth, looking for improvement. And how do we do that? Well, we do that when we all know that we're working on the same goals, that we've come together ultimately as a community to talk about what those are, what our priorities are, what our mission, our vision, our core values, and then what our goals are. It's not a plan that gets shelved, but it's something that lives and breathes and that we go back to over and over and over again. And so this is just year 1. You're going to hear lots and lots from myself and all district administration when it comes to strategic planning for years to come. So again, we were very intentional about this process. It was important from the very beginning that we reach out to the full community. We did that through the thought exchange and received quite a bit of feedback. We connected with our staff. We pulled in large groups to actually do some of that great work as well. But again, it was all about making sure that this is a document that is a community document. It's not a superintendent document. It's not an administrative cabinet document. It's not building administrators document. It is a community document, and it should hopefully speak to what the community values. So just a real quick overview of what we did. Community feedback gathered January of 24 through the thought exchange. February 24, we came together as an administrative group and Board of Education to look at feedback through that thought exchange, and then we drafted mission, vision, core values by that group. We then came back together in March of 24 with a much larger group. I think we had about 63 individuals total that were at that meeting that night, and we reviewed the draft mission, vision, and core values, and then talked more about the priority areas and strategies that we should move forward. We broke up into kind of focus groups, if you will, had more detailed conversations about that. Again, all while eliciting feedback. We kept on going back to and using thought exchange so that every individual that was a part of that conversation was able to add their thoughts and their feedback to be considered as we were continuing to refine and develop. Then in April of 24, we came back together as an administrative group try to take all of that feedback and put it into a more refined final draft document. And then in addition to that, do some of the action planning work. What are some of the steps that we're gonna take to address those main priority areas and the goals that were really outlined in that phase 2, that large kind of community group together. That work really helped to define what those goals were. And now we're to summer of and fall of '24, where we want to finalize and get the board's approval on the strategic plan, and then really look at communicating to the larger community what that strategic plan looks like, and then start the actual work of how do we find ways to make this living and breathing. So, mission, vision, core values. The finalized mission statement is we empower and engage students to guarantee their successful future. And again, this was refined at each one of those steps that we took along the way with our all stakeholders' feedback. Vision, our school community is dedicated to equity and excellence for all students. And then our core values. And these came back over and over again. Respect, learning, integrity, caring, innovation, community connections, collaboration, safety, social and emotional well-being, and diversity and inclusivity. My thought is if you go back and look at all of the feedback that we received in the thought exchange way back in January, I don't think there's a single comment in that thought exchange that you can't somehow find and connect back to these core values. So again, it was really important that those that were willing to engage with us and engage in this process, we wanted their voice to be heard, seen, and then living in this document as we moved forward. So our work in priority areas, there were 4 main priority areas identified. And again, those priority areas we're just trying to put as almost like little buckets, if you will, to categorize those main ideas that came out of those thought exchanges and conversations. So we have school culture and climate, student success, community connections, and operation systems. Those were the bigs. And the goals are consistently implement an evidence-based framework for teaching, assessing, and addressing student behavior. Student success, we will take steps to improve individual student success through focus on the areas of literacy across disciplines, multiple pathways to success, and partnerships with families. Under community connections, we will establish multiple modalities to engage our community in school events, programs, and offerings in an effort to maintain positive connections and innovative opportunities for our students. And the final, we will develop efficiencies and optimize resources and infrastructure to meet the changing needs of our community. So, what's next? Next is, what are we going to do to move the district forward next year and in the next couple of years? And this is where the administrative group came together to start drafting what are the action steps that we're going to take and who's responsible. And then what's the accountability? What's the time frame? When are we going to know? And so what I've placed here are just a couple of samples from each of those priority areas. But if you look at your draft document, you have the full draft strategic plans or action plans for each of those priority areas. And again, this is an opportunity for us to show very clearly at the granular level, what are the things we're going to do next year? What are the things that we're going to do in the next 2 years? And then again, who's responsible? Because again, it's about the accountability piece. It's about putting action into the plan. That's a very important part. If a strategic plan is actually going to move us forward, there has to be actionable steps. And I think the groups did a really nice job of identifying those key areas that were important to the community. And while I think a lot of this is ambitious to get done in the time frame in which they've put out there, I still feel as though it's reasonable for us to strive to meet those goals. So what's next? So our time frame is in the summer, we want the final approval. If there's some tweaks that we have to make, we'll do so, but want a final approval from the Board of Education on the strategic plan. Then it will be really about communicating to the community, starting with our full staff, our students, but also the greater community. Then in the fall, we're going to have all of the buildings develop their own building-specific action plans to forward the work that's happening based on the district plan. And I hope to have them here in October to present to you each one of the building plans. And then throughout the course of the year, our hope is come spring, that they will be back again to talk about progress. What have we done? What are the areas where we still have work to do? But it's very important in any strategic plan that there are regular updates of what's happening, what's the progress that we're making. Because we're always should be going back and evaluating, is this addressing all the needs that we have? Are there other issues that we need to address? Because there are absolutely items on here that we're going to check off. It doesn't mean we're done. It means what's next on the list. So we should be coming back and revising these action plans, not only at the district level, but also at the building level annually. And so my hope is that the board will be receiving at minimum, every fall you're gonna give presentations from buildings as to what their plans are for that academic year, and then that spring, they're gonna report back as to what the progress that they've made. Right? And again, our hope is that this work becomes ingrained in everything that we do. Our budget meetings are centered around it. Our decision-making, whether we're talking about facilities, it doesn't matter what area that we're talking about. The strategic plan should really be highlighting the priorities of the district and where our focuses should be. And the more we work with this, the more we refine this throughout the years, the more targeted it will become. And so my hope is that will help us to move the district forward in a very purposeful way. Again, a big thank you to all those that participated in our group meetings, and I'll address any questions that you might have.
Can you identify on page?
I don't have those memorized.
I'm sorry. It's the part where you have it's page 7. You have all these things like guiding coalition, PLC, district MTSS team. What are all of these things?
So these are all part of our curriculum work. So professional learning communities as PLCs, our guiding coalitions are our foundational groups of staff members and teachers within each building that are helping to move that work forward. So we do use some language that's very, very focused on the educators within it. We did talk a little bit about, should we include a glossary? So
If you're
that no
presenting this to the public,
matter
you
who
need
picks
to,
it up,
yeah.
they can see it. I thought about defining it within it, but then the boxes became too big.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anything wrong with putting some explanation, maybe a glossary at the tail end to address or identify any of those acronyms or other items that maybe a layperson who is not within the educational community would then understand.
Thanks.
Right. Time frame, in the time frame column, is that the start or execution, or is that the end of the time frame? Like when you say fall 2024, obviously that I interpret that as that being the beginning, and you said that we're going to continuously check this work.
Yep.
But like for the first curriculum or the first one, fall 2024, then spring in 2025. What do those timeframes mean?
So again, they mean something different based on the type of actions that we're taking. So in many cases, it's the work is beginning and or it's ongoing. You know, I could very easily, in the majority of these, just put ongoing, because that work is going to continue in perpetuity. This is when we are beginning that work, and so that work has started. In some cases, we might get to certain aspects of it where we come and saying, this work is done, we're transitioning to here's what's next. But it kind of just gives a general idea as to when the meat of the work will begin. And so you should be able to see also, I should be able to speak to the work that we've done within it in that given year or that time frame. again, I'll say this is hefty. This is very aggressive and a very heavy lift. When I look about the aggressiveness of the timeline, and you look at all of the pieces that are ultimately within it, but I still feel as though it's appropriate to be aggressive with the understanding that we might come and saying, look, we didn't get to these couple of areas, and here's how we're making some adjustments to make sure they're addressed in the following year.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kilmer. Next on the agenda are the committee discussions. Community Relations Committee. Sean?
We met yesterday morning and discussed our new quarterly newsletter that will come out right near Labor Day. It'll include a lot of things that happened over the summer, but some important things that will be happening in the fall, and that should be mailed near the end of August.
Great. Thank you very much. Does facilities have anything? No, good there. Policy, are we good? We're good. Thank you. Visitation, Kristen?
Yes, thank you. Our most recent stop on the District World Tour was to the warehouse building, which was not the same level of fun as when we visit the schools, but it was fun nonetheless. One, we learned, I guess, something we already knew, which is that we have great staff working over there. It was very interesting to see the logistical operation we have of all of the stock, both like dry goods, like cleaning supplies, paper, that kind of stuff, as well as the food supplies, and them moving them around, shifting them around. Ian is undertaking some new inventory project that he's tasked some poor unsuspecting college student with counting every box in the warehouse for the summer and inputting all the data into a computer program, so that moving forward, we'll have this really good inventory system in place and we'll be able to track everything. We also talked about a recent program where we're leasing a forklift instead of buying it, which is great for the district because that means that maintenance is covered by the owner of the forklift instead of by the district. And so it's fiscally responsible. And we also talked about some maintenance needs over there, most notable of which I would say has to do with that back parking lot and the fact that it clearly needs to be repaved, among other things. And all told, Ian, as with every other building principal, was a fantastic host and gave us a great tour. And our last stop of the year is going to be the transportation building next week, which I'll report on at the organizational meeting on the 2nd. And then I will turn it over to whomever is going to be in charge next year for their tours.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Consent agenda is next, so I'm going to group these together. So I've got items A through J. So if I can get a motion for consent agenda items A through J, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you, Julie. Is there any discussion? Okay, haven't heard none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is anybody opposed? Motion carries. Personnel, Mr. Syracuse.
Good evening, everyone. On the personnel agenda, item A and B, we have a couple retirements. So item A, we have Pamela North, who's a teaching assistant. She began in the district on September 6, 2005, and her retirement date is September 1st, 2024. Our support staff retirements, we have John Altman, an HVAC mechanic. He started in the district in that role February 5th, 2018, and his last day will be August 30th, 2024. And last, Corey Donovan, she's a senior typist at Layton. She began on September 3rd, 1997, and her retirement date is 9/1/2024. So congratulations to the three of them, and we wish them very well and certainly good health in their retirement. So items A and B.
Great, thank you. Can I get a motion for items A and B, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, and I'll group the next grouping is items C through S as presented.
Okay, so if I can get a motion for items C through S.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second? Thank you, Sean. Is there any discussion? Okay, having heard none, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Finance, Mr. Calucci.
Thank you. I'd like to group A through G together as presented.
Okay, so if I can get a motion for items A through G.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Julie. Any discussion? Haven't heard none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. We also have items H through J. Items H and I are donations from Charities for Aid from Exelon that total $620. And J is a building use request for Stuff a Bus.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion for H through J, please? Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Julie. Any comments?
Just saying thank you again to Exelon and for donations made. We appreciate it all the time. Thank you.
Anything else? Have we heard none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries. Items from the board is next on our agenda. Do any board members have items?
I have an item. I just wanted to say, Lisa, is this your last night with us? Yes, and Michael's not here. It would be his last night with us as well. But I just say good luck and thank you for your years here. And it's thank you for all the retirees throughout the year, and we're on the list tonight, all their years of service. I just wanted to say thank you, because this is our last year. I just want to say, too, on a personal note, I'm very encouraged. Thank you, Dr. Kilmer, for the presentation, both for the strategic planning and also the long-range planning for the facilities. I feel very lucky. I think this board is very strong. It's the first time in 6 years, first time I've ever been on, the board has not changed going into the next year, which gives us a leg up and a strength going into that year, and I appreciate everybody that's been part of that, and I just wanted to say that and carry us into next year. I think we're in a good place and we're heading in the right direction, so I appreciate all of you and all your work, so thank you.
I just wanted to say I had the opportunity to attend the sports awards this last week. I want to thank the Buck Boosters for putting that on. They had a great speaker. He is an assistant soccer coach at Oswego State, among a lot of other credentials. His message was basically, it's okay to ask for help. And his connection, I guess, to Buck Boosters is that Corey Brosh, who's on the booster board, who's a counselor at Oswego State, was his mental health counselor at Oswego State, and he basically said everyone needs to find their Corey, and it's okay to do that, to find that person for you and to ask for help, to grow as a person, which I thought was a great message for high school students as they're about to embark out on whatever's next for them. And there was a lot to be proud of in our athletes who are being honored. They were being honored for academics. They were being honored for success on the field. They were being honored for being great people. I especially want to do a shout out to Kylie Pratt, who was honored for the Michelle Wink Award for basically being an all-around awesome person and doing things that are selfless. And not because she was going to get a reward at the end, but because it was just the right thing to do. And I think she was surprised to get it. I know, because I'm a volleyball mom, that I thought she absolutely deserved it, as I see her at practices for a sport that she wasn't even on the team for. And so I wanted to congratulate everybody who got an award, all the parents who supported their kids and have been bringing them to practices since they were 3 years old. And again, thank the boosters for putting on a great event.
Thank you, Kristen. Anybody else?
This isn't an item for the board, but it is about the board. So I just I know Michael's not here, but I have a certificate and a little item for him, just to thank him for his service. You know, we all know that every one of you volunteers your time here, but so do our students. And so really grateful for Michael sitting here with us for the year, offering his perspective. I am happy to report that the legislature has passed legislation that will require student members moving forward. The governor still has to sign that legislation. She has not done so as of this time. I do expect that she will do so this summer. And so this past year will be the last time we actually have to put it on the ballot, it would be my assumption. However, every board in New York State will have the privilege of having a student sit and be a voice, which I think is a really important part of that. So a big thank you to Michael.
Anybody else? So I'll just say I had the honor of attending the high school honors. It was a great event. I thank everybody for putting it on. I also was at the Kingsford Park Spotlight, and having been a number of years removed of going to the spotlights with my kids, it was great to see. Thank all the sixth grade teachers for putting it together. It was a wonderful presentation with tons of pictures, great music. It was really well done. I know that the parents and the students really appreciated it. I'd also echo a little bit of what Tom had to say and thank the fellow board members here. This is the first time that I've looked through the past that all 7 members will carry over. And I've really very much appreciated how everybody has worked together and how everybody's really stood up to do a shared carrying of the load. I think that's very important if we're going to have this kind of governance, to be as inclusive as possible, not only with the general community, but within ourselves. I think very much that leading by example is a good way to go through things. And how we act very much signifies, how we're moving forward, I think, as a district. So I just want to thank all my fellow board members. Okay, we do have the need for an executive session tonight for 2 reasons. One is collective negotiations pursuant Article 14 of Civil Service Law, and the second is the medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation. There will not be a need for a vote at the end. So if I can have a motion to move to executive, please.
I'll move.
Thank you, Kristen. Is there a second? Thank you, Sean. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.